Well, hello, Dev.
Dev.
Dev is here, but he's muted, so I don't know what's going
Hello.
on.
Good.
Hello. So what?
Hello.
Why are you coming out as a monarchist on the stream? What's going on?
Okay, so first of all, arguing over whether or not something is left or right wing is just retarded on the face of it, automatically, always, because it doesn't actually say anything about any of the ideas. It's
That's a
just,
cuck. That's a cuck answer. I'm sorry, Dev.
but it's the truth. It's the
It does.
truth.
Everyone. Here's the
Hold on.
problem.
However,
Wait.
hold on. No.
These
Let me
are
finish.
names and
Let
labels
me
that everyone
finish.
uses. You have to have the conversation. You can't just say, "Well,
So,
it's all stupid."
yes. However, if you are gonna have the conversation, okay,
Uh-huh.
the the low IQ take is saying that fascism, or sorry, Nazism is right wing. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
the the mid IQ take is saying that it's left wing. The high IQ take is saying that it's centrist because it's obviously centrist.
It's a mixed
Mm.
economy. This is exactly what I said.
And why is it
Why did we
centrist?
bring Dev
I'm
on
messing with
again?
you.
Yeah. Why are you
So I
why are
can
you
so I
besmirching the
can
name of centrism with
so I can
Nazism,
wrecking ball
Dev?
the whole fucking thing. That's
Uh-huh.
why. Yes.
Why is it centrist?
No, it's
Oh my
obviously
God.
centrist, of course, because it has a
He's
whole
like
bunch of
he's
right
like
wing
all
policies and has a whole
these
bunch of left wing policies.
What are the right wing policies that the Nazis have?
Oh, the ethno nationalism, obviously.
Why is
The
ethno-nationalism a right wing
imperialism,
policy?
the hold on, the
Yeah,
imperialism,
that's the
right?
question I want. Why is ethno-nationalism a right-wing policy? Why
So
is that not left-wing? I
I'll
mean, there are
agree with
plenty of black
okay, well,
nationalists
I'll
that are
agree
on
with
the
the
left.
imperialism. I will disagree with the ethno-nationalism part.
you think that ethno nationalism is left wing?
I think ethno-nationalism can be centrist.
Sure, maybe. Well, here's the thing, right? When you talk about like black nationalists, Adam and Sitch, you guys think those guys are right wing or left wing?
I think, and we've talked about this before. I think it's kind of
We have, yeah.
ironic. I think the black nationalists are actually right wing, even if they identify as socialists. I think they're actually right wing. It's just that
Okay,
Yes.
how
socialism,
come?
because the way that I view these movements is what is it all in service to? What is the underlying goal? And if the goal is ethno nationalism, even if you have some economic policy that's socialist, it's still a right wing. It's all
Okay.
the service of a right wing
Um,
philosophy.
what about nationalistic movements that spring up as a result of post-colonialism?
I don't I can't even conceptualize what you're saying. So you have to give me some like a
Okay,
grounded
so
example or something, or a hypothetical or something.
Right. I mean, you know about like the post-colonial isms, right? Like how like
Yes, of
what
course.
post-colonial yeah, where
Yeah.
the we're at a point now where there's no longer actually direct empires. Instead, the European powers have pulled out of Africa and Asia and South America, and instead, what they do is those places have their own governments, but they're
Hmm.
still ultimately bought and paid for by the capitalists of Europe and North America. And so now you have this colonial system that is not actually an empire, but instead you have like foreign companies coming in and extracting resources and
Sure.
paying
Sure.
workers like all very low wages for the actual work that they're doing, right? So this is a
Hmm.
post-colonial situation, right? So
Right.
there's a whole bunch of movements across the world that leftists in the West tend to really support that are post-colonial, and they want to decolonize capitalism out of their nations. But they also, as a result of the fact that they're these third world countries, they also become nationalist. So are these
Hmm.
So
left-wing or right-wing movements?
so
What
basically
is
what you're describing is what's happening in Rwanda, where the local government that is mostly black Africans has voted out the white farming population, is what you're saying, right?
Possibly. I don't know about that specific situation.
So
well?
Rwanda basically passed a bunch of laws saying that if you have colonialist ties, basically white people, if you're a white farmer, the state, haha, we're going to come back into privatization. The state can come in and take your property and give it to the people who were it was rightfully owned by.
All right.
Is that kind of what you're describing?
Kind of,
They're
not
they're quote
exactly.
unquote
Well,
decolonizing.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's kind of it. I'm talking more like you have banana republics where the
Okay.
government basically just kind of works on behalf of a Western corporation that has set up shop and is extracting value from the nation. And then you have these revolutionaries who are revolting against this, and they're anti-capitalist, but they're also very nationalist. So are these right wingers or left wingers?
So what is so is the policy of these like this faction is that they're what kind of system do they want to implement once they get rid of all these private companies?
I mean, they generally want to implement a socialist system. They almost never do, but they generally do want to.
Well, then
I think the
I would say
example,
it'd be leftist then.
sure, but they are nationalist though.
Okay.
They are ethno nationalist, in fact.
Well, that'd be interesting. I'd have to know more about the specific thing to see how to categorize it.
I will
Um,
bring up a couple of things for later on
Well,
because I'm it's really funny. I'm having this debate at work, so I'm on break.
that's pretty funny.
oh, nice,
So
dude. So, are you gonna get fired?
nah, nobody cares. I'm sitting at my work computer right now.
Oh, okay.
But it's one of I will bring up a couple of things about the was it 2016 or 2017? There was I think this vote was in like the mid tens for usage.
Hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Are you taking off?
Well, oh,
We
you
don't want to
leaving
get you in
Proto
trouble.
Oh no, I'm fine.
But do
Okay.
super chat us on the company credit card though.
Sucks? So,
Look, okay. Boss man makes $1, I make a dime, and that's exactly why I poop on company time.
Well, hold on.
yeah, you're a
I want
socialist. I
to,
got it. Yeah.
I got to address something. I want to address the super chat. Brian for
Okay.
$20 says, ethno-nationalism can be right wing or left wing. What you're saying is to be racist is to be right wing, and I don't believe there's anything in the Republican conservative philosophy that leads to racism. That's not my position.
No,
My
that's not
position
sophisticated.
is that so if we're going to look at like, and I guess I don't know, I feel like I said this a million times, but it always gets like lost. All right. So
Okay.
if you're ethno nationalist and so you're saying that like my ethnicity is the superior ethnicity, I think that's a more inherent right wing position on the right wing side of the scale. If you're on the side of the scale where you say there is an ethnic component to like the society that is the majority oppressor population and they're like causing all the problems and they're oppressing all the people, that's a left wing position. And that's kind of what we're
Okay.
saying with wokeness, where they say, oh, like white bad, right? So
Well, okay,
racism
then
can be
hold on, hold
both a
on.
left or right wing position. Racism isn't necessarily just a right wing position.
So I agree with you, Sitch, but here's the thing. If you look at a lot of the anti-Semites from Nazi Germany, they had a left-wing form of racism because
Sure.
because some of them believed that, the Aryan race was just a superior master race, but others said, hold on, the Jews are a foreign population in Germany causing all of the problems.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if I were to expound on that, do you think the replacement I'm gonna try to phrase this to not flag YouTube because I know it flags Discord all the time. Do you think this more new not necessarily neutered, but this more mixed, like everyone will be brown in the United States in 50 years is ethno-nationalism to some degree? Like
Wait, the
there
idea
will
that
be no
people
more
want that
black,
to
there will
be
be
like
no I'm
people, what
yes,
do you mean?
actually. Do you think the policy that everyone in the United States will be like brown or black, that there will be no white or black in the United States?
I
Do
think
you
if
think that is
you
a form of ethno-nationalism?
right, if you are a brown person, if you're not white and you're like, yay, I want the country to be more brown. Okay, I would say that's like an ethno-nationalist position, and it's more of like what I consider puts you more on the right-wing side of things. If you're a
Yeah, but
white
that's what the
person,
left
right,
wants.
I understand. I understand. Let me finish. If you're a
Okay.
white person and you're like, I want the country to be more brown because either I think that's going to help the Democrats win elections or because I think white people are bad, which is again, it's still a form of racism, then that makes you, I say it's a more left wing position. It's a leftist position.
I don't know about
Hmm.
that. I have to think about it. But here
Yeah,
though,
same.
let's
He
go back though
stumped you
because
both. Look.
no, I just haven't thought
No.
about it before. It's new to me.
Well,
But here,
this is
I
because
do.
let me just say it again
Hold
because
on,
I
hold
guess
on.
let
Okay,
me just
okay,
throw.
okay.
Okay, this is my thing, and I've said this again, but I
Yeah.
said it a million times. But I guess I gotta say it again. Okay, my conception of left and right is that the right views that all of our answers for society come from tradition and established systems. And when we have a problem, we need to raise the borders and look inward because all of the problems that come are from outside of our system. Some external force comes into our system and degenerates it, and we need to expel it and look inward to find our answers. That's kind of like the right wing conception of reality. The left wing
Okay.
conception of reality is the opposite. It's saying all of our problems stem from existing systems, existing traditions, and come from within. And in order to find solutions, we need to go outside of them, go to outside of our borders, find new answers, and bring them into our society. And that's kind
So
of
so
how I
here
conceptualize the left versus right.
so here's the thing though, is that by that definition, there's a lot of leftism in Nazi Germany.
There might be.
Because
Sure.
I mean, first of all, the Nazis didn't raise the borders; they expanded them out, right? They didn't reestablish the
It
old.
They were
means
raising what
conquest.
Just wait,
they're
yet
they were raising
nonetheless,
categorical borders between like what defines, a German, what defines a white person.
they also didn't reestablish any of the old pre-Weimar social institutions. They didn't bring back the Kaiser. They didn't. They
They were
didn't.
looking
There was no
for
German
older
conservatism.
but wait,
No,
wait,
no,
wait.
no, no. They
Weren't
made
weren't the
completely new institutions.
wait. I agree they were making new institutions, but wasn't the guiding philosophy of Nazism that we need to go back to this older way of thinking, this, kind of uh like this, that's kind of why they're anti-Christianity. They're like Christianity is like the slave religion that's kind of newer and it, gives credence to weakness. And we need to go back to like an older, more like European pre-Christian idea where strength is lionized. And this is why like a lot of the white
Um,
nationalists and Nazis are actually like kind of anti-Christian.
Well, then
this
why
is an
did they bring
idea.
in
Hold on,
new
hold on, hold on.
implementations of socialism?
Well, this is an idea that came in to the Nazi movement after 1945. This wasn't
Oh,
part
okay.
of them initially.
Well, I thought it was for
The
Hitler
Nazis
then.
post 1945 absolutely think this way for sure, but
Mhm.
this wasn't really part of what they were doing. No, for
Well, I
them, a
mean,
lot of
Hitler.
it was
Mhm.
about remaking society in a revolutionary manner, the same way that the left wanted to do. Just
Right.
that their revolution was a different revolution, but it wasn't appealing to a past.
Well,
It wasn't what like reactionaries did.
why do you think that the post 1945 Nazi movement is situated in the way that I said?
Um,
Because it falls under the policies of fighting the communists in Soviet Union.
Well, no, in
that's
terms of
that's like
this.
10% of it. Yeah, I mean, how much retarded literature do you want to go through today, Sitch?
I mean,
Well,
we
no,
could
but
TLDR
do
the Berlin
you?
Wall.
I guess what the reason I'm asking that question is, do not like the conception of left and right that I'm laying out? I don't understand if you agree with it or disagree with it.
I kind of agree with it. I think there's
Okay.
more to it than that, but yeah, I kind
Well,
of
there's
agree with
always
it.
I'm trying to do it as broadly as possible. Obviously, there's always
Yeah,
going
I
to be
mean,
more
here,
to it.
if you want like the most broad definition of left and right that applies to pretty much every circumstance and
But
also
wait,
every
let me
time period.
before you give that, let me
Well,
just say why my definition of right
I've heard
applies to the
yours though already.
Nazis.
I've already heard
Okay.
yours though. I've heard it
Okay,
many
give me
times.
yours. Okay, give me
Yeah,
yours.
yeah, just hear mine out. Okay, so basically, the left is universalism. The right is particularism. The
Hmm.
left is social constructivist, and the right is nativist. That's basically it. And the Nazis had a whole bunch of points in all of those camps.
What is the particularist versus the universalist?
So the universalists tend to believe that there should be like one standard of law, one standard of institution for all. This is
Hmm.
like this is the liberal aspirational idea of
Sure.
everyone should be judged equally by the law. This is the socialist aspirational idea of there should be no classes, we're all equal. This is like universalism is like it's the flattening of power basically and the
Sure.
standardization of how everyone is judged.
Hmm.
The particularist idea is one where we understand that each community is different. It has like a different tone, a different culture, and they want to basically be self-governed. And you can see as you look at these two ideas, liberalism kind of straddles between them because liberals do like universal standards for all, but they also understand the idea of communities wanting to be self-governed and to be somewhat separate from other communities. So liberalism is that tricky centrist philosophy.
Sure. And
However, the Nazis also agreed with both points in the end,
right, but
which
under
is why
the
they're centrists. The
okay,
Nazis are like the evil inverse of the
okay.
liberals.
Under your kind of definitions of particularism versus universalism,
Mhm.
how wouldn't CRT and current socialist kiddies nowadays be right wing? Because they don't believe in universalism at all. They're anti-universalism.
What do you mean?
Their whole prescription when they look at Israel and they look at anything is there should not be a universal rule that applies to everyone. I have to instead operate according to P plus P equals R. If there's a power differential, if there's a class differential, different rules suddenly apply to the calculation.
Yeah, see, so the whole privilege plus power thing, that is their way of trying to get at what should eventually be a universalist principle. Um, also, and when we're talking about Israel, what you'll notice is they never the very far left people, they never actually accept two-state solutions. They always say it has to be a one-state solution.
No.
Well,
That's not what I mean.
I
Hold
know,
on.
but
Let me,
this help explain it though, because if you talk to like a liberal or like most reasonable people, they say two-state solutions, right? Because it's probably it's going to be hard to work out, but two-state solution is probably the best. The far
Mhm.
left people want a one-state solution because they say, well, everyone's the same, everyone's equal. There's no differences between all these individuals because we're all universalized. So why can't it just be one state? Now
they
the
make the
obvious answer
argument
is
that
it can't be
everybody
one
is
state.
Palestinian.
They make the argument that everyone's the same, basically.
Well,
So
wait,
that's
wait,
kind
wait,
of what
wait.
they're getting at.
But no, because like, okay, so the liberal position, the liberalism position is to say, okay, well, if you have free speech, this free speech applies to everyone equally. From a universal perspective, everyone has to follow the same rules, right? And then you have kind of like the woke socialist who says, oh, no, 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 you're a white person and this is a black person. And because of the history of systemic racism and blah, 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 different rules suddenly apply to the calculation. And this black person gets, extra speech rights and you get less speech rights.
Couldn't that also be applied to what Saudi Arabia is doing to is it Yemen? What's
Well, hold
the
on.
country that
Here's what I think you're getting at. Actually, wait, hold on. It just completely left my brain. What did you just say, Sitch?
I said, okay, we're talking about because you were saying universalism is left wing and particularism is right wing. And
Yes.
I'm saying that the woke socialists nowadays, they use
Right. No free speech.
particularism.
No free speech. Right. So here's
No,
the
no,
thing.
it's no free speech for white people, right? But
Yes,
it's
that's
ultimate free
yeah.
speech for not white people.
Yeah. So I think the way that they're conceptualizing it is that this is basically bringing the equality back because white people have had the free speech historically and black people haven't. So we have to basically give black people the free speech and not white people until such things as it's equalized, right? So this is them. They're still pursuing the universality in the
Okay,
end.
okay. So
That's
I
still
think I
what
understand.
drives them. Yes.
Right. So you're saying that you can have a left wing movement like the woke socialists nowadays that could be using tactics or behaviors that you might consider right wing, but if it's still in service of a broader leftist goal, then it's still a left wing movement, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's my exact point about the Nazis is that their broader goal, the ethno-nationalist goal, was the primary goal is what we would both consider right wing. So therefore, even if they implement left wing policies to get there, it's still a right wing movement.
Well, would it be though? Because like we talked earlier about ethno-nationalism, we said it had left wing and right wing components.
Because okay, I guess the simple way to say it is that if you're ethno-nationalist in favor of your own ethnicity, I'd say that's right wing. If you're ethno-nationalist against your ethnicity, that's a left wing policy. So if you're racist towards
I
your
mean,
own
I
in
guess,
group,
but
that's
like,
right wing. If you're racist against your in group, that's left wing.
hmm. So here's the thing. The issue with that, and this is why I said when I came in here, the Nazis were centrists in the end, is
Mhm.
because there was a good chunk of both of those
That
in the
were
Nazi.
racist against their own in group.
No. They were there was a chunk of them that believed that they were naturally superior and they
Mhm.
deserved to rule the world.
Right.
And then there were a
Right.
chunk of them that believed that they were victims and they were a victimized, oppressed class that had to be liberated,
Mhm.
which is also a left wing that is a left wing
No,
component
but
of
but that's a
nationalism.
classic. There is a classic idea. So you can even have we look at like the Nick Fuentes white nationalist movement, right?
Mhm.
And obviously they're ethno nationalists. They self-identify as being far right. I think most people would agree with that definition. And they're definitely saying like, oh, like white people on some intrinsic level they believe is superior to non-white people. But at the same
Yeah,
time, they do say, oh, well, white people are being victimized by Jews and non-whites via crime, via birth rates, via blah, 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 blah. Right. So those aren't contradictory ideas.
sure. But here's the thing though, is you could go talk to a black nationalist who would say the exact two things. Black people are
Hmm.
superior and black people are
Yes.
victimized. We
Yeah.
still call that a left wing movement though.
Yeah. But I think that's wrong.
Okay.
I think
You
that's a
do?
right wing movement. I think ethno
it's
nationalism
Well then,
definitionally in
so
favor
so
of
here
your own ethnicity is a right wing movement.
so if that's the case, if that's the case, then we kind of get to the universalist particularist model, right? Where the particularist is right wing, and he's the one who is specifically oriented towards a single community rather than a universal standard.
No, I might actually, I'd have to think about it, but I might agree with you, universal versus particularism being a more left right wing thing. I might agree
Yeah.
with that completely.
Mhm.
But I'm just saying you get into this problem because there definitely are Well, here's why this is a difficult and weird conversation. Okay. I believe you could have a white person advocate for policies, and because they're white, I would categorize it as them being a leftist, right? If they're a white person who's very racist against white people and advocating against white people from a racialist perspective, I'd say that person's probably a leftist. But if you're a black person and you're advocating for racism against white people and advocating for like black nationalism, I'd say that's a right wing policy. So you can have two people advocating for the same policy, but one could be from a leftist perspective and one could be from a right wing perspective.
Right, right. So at this point, since even though you can isolate out left-wing components of ethno-nationalism, it
Mhm.
does seem to be the case that ethno-nationalism, because it's a particular movement rather than a universalist one, it is on the right ultimately.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. So if you think that Nazi Germany was only ethno-nationalist and that was its main driving force, then you could say that it was a right-wing movement. But I'm
Well,
not sure.
I wouldn't say only,
I'm
I'd
not
say
sure I believe that.
primarily.
So
I'm not
That
sure
was
if I
their
believe
primary
that.
goal.
if
What
I can
was their
jump in real
primary
quick.
goal, do you think?
I think a lot of it was what it was what the left would call nowadays post-colonial.
Mhm.
That's exactly
If
what
that
I
makes
was trying to
sense.
get into. Like literally just now you brought that back up. My understanding of this conversation so far is that if the left were to allow Palestinians to say, okay, everybody inside Palestine has to be Arab, that's the left supporting the underdog in the P plus P plus R argument. But that would still fall under the definition of an ethno state because everybody within Palestine is an Arab. There would be no Jews, there would be no Christians, there would be no white people, there would be no Chinese, etc. So under that framework, would the left be supporting a right wing policy of ethno nationalism?
Well, I don't know if the left would. It's hard for me to imagine the left would say everyone in Israel has to be Arab, right?
No,
That's
Palestine.
what do you mean? But they're not saying that they have to change their ethnicity. They're saying, I mean, they're saying this kind of fantasy idea that it should just not be Israel, it should be Palestine, it should be a magical multicultural one state, right?
Yeah, but they're saying right now Israel is an ethno state when they're
Right,
not. There are Arabs living
right.
within Israel, but there
Yes,
are
right.
zero Jews living within Gaza.
Yes,
So
yes, 100%.
is the left unironically or unintentionally, or are they just too stupid to realize the fact that they're supporting Palestine or Gaza, which is an ethno state? There's zero Jews
Yeah, they're
in
stupid.
Gaza right now.
They're stupid and racist. They're
So
racist against white people. Yes,
so they're just unironically supporting a right wing policy, is what you're claiming.
100%. Well, it depends. If they're white, yes. If they're not white, then maybe not.
Uh,
Because what you're saying is true, and this is kind of the irony of the situation. Obviously, if we were to say what government, like if we were to take Hamas, okay, and then we were to take the Israeli government, and say put these on a spectrum of left and right, obviously the everyone that's not retarded would say, okay, Hamas is obviously going to be much further right than the Israeli government. Correct? We'd all agree here with that.
to some degree, I would agree.
I mean, it's a religious theocratic organization. It's a theocracy, essentially.
I mean,
And Israel is not.
There are Muslims that can still practice in Israel, and there are
No, no,
Christians
no,
that can
no.
still practice.
I'm saying Hamas is a theocracy,
Oh, Hamas.
and
Yes,
and
sorry.
Israel is a democracy that is that
Hamas is
has religious
absolutely
freedom,
a
right?
theocracy, correct?
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So Hamas, I think most would agree, Hamas is further right than the Israeli government, and yet because of kind of a bunch of other political considerations, the leftists bend over backwards to defend the religious theocracy that is Hamas.
Well,
I
yeah,
would
because
have
they're
to come up
brown,
with,
obviously.
yeah, I
Well,
would have to
there you
come up
go,
with
and
a
that's where
better
the
argument
racism
that
comes in.
disagrees with that.
Right. So
So okay, here's what I mean though, right? See, I found what I was looking for. I don't know if wait, is there a chat in Zoom I can
there
drop
is.
this in? Where is it?
If you hit the more button, there
Okay,
should
I
be
see
something
it
that
now.
says
Thank
chat.
you. Yeah, I posted this because this was back during my Hitler reading arc.
Oh
Mhm.
my God.
Yes, yes, Adam. I read all the nonsense.
How
But yeah,
many
so
copies of Mein Kampf do you own?
Yeah, exactly.
just the one. It's illegal to own any more than one. But yeah, so this is a guy on January 15th he's from a very far left group who's very pro-Palestine, anti-Israel. And he said, when we finally deal that final blow to destroy Israel, when the state of Israel is finally destroyed and erased from history, that will be the single most important blow we can give to destroying capitalism. This is a very far left guy, right?
Hmm.
Um, this is the same shit that the National Socialists said, ultimately. Now, it wasn't about Israel because Israel didn't really exist as a country, but they blamed a lot of the capitalist problems on Jews, and they talked a lot about the oppression of the Germans, which is why I replied with the logic here that international capitalism is a system of rich empires extracting wealth from poor vassals is the same logic that Hitler used regarding Germany's World War I reparation payments, or Mussolini used to describe the mutilated victory.
Yeah, but
And well, this is an important part of the
mhm.
conversation, though, right? Because it wasn't just the Aryan race is superior. That wasn't the only animating force. Another huge animating force, just on the ethno-nationalist part of the Nazi conversation, was the fact that they felt like they were being extracted from and taken advantage of by stronger nations, and that it was ultimately a form of racism against them that they had to revolt against. And
Yeah,
this is
no.
why, by the way, the
Mhm.
Americans said at the end of World War II, okay, we're not going to make you pay back for all the damage you did. We're actually going to help you rebuild, because they understood that World War I is what caused World War II to happen.
Right. And yeah, definitely the German people, they definitely, they're coming out of World War One. The Weimar Republic is having all sorts of economic problems and is very not stable. And they feel like they're getting taken advantage of by the other countries. And they feel like they're being oppressed by the other countries. I agree with all that. But there's a difference, ideological difference between saying we need to abolish capitalism because capitalism is an oppressive structure that the elites use to control us, and we instead need to have some kind of, you know, universal flattened hierarchy, one class of people that, are all unified together. That's very different than saying, oh, we're being oppressed by these other nations and capitalism is coming in and degenerating our Germanness, our German peopleness, and we need to fight off these oppressive shackles and once again regain ourselves, or once again go to the top of the hierarchy to reestablish our natural dominance as being the superior Aryan people. Like these are very different
Well,
ideologies that are reacting to
real
the
quick, Dev.
same
yeah, okay, go
physical
ahead. Go ahead.
economic limitations.
But I do have to run. I just got called into a meeting. One,
Don't get fired.
so one, good conversation. Two, Shu, congrats on the baby. Bye.
Thanks for
Later.
coming on to our sex. Okay.
Well, there he goes. So the
Anyway.
thing is, Sitch, like you had it up until the very end, right? Because for when we're talking about the post-colonial, if we're going to use, it wasn't called post-colonial back then, but it shares a lot of similarities with today's post-colonial movements. Let's just call it that, right? The
Mhm.
post-colonial aspect of what motivated Nazi Germany, they didn't do it out of a sense of superiority. They did it out of a sense of liberation. This was a my people are being oppressed argument,
No,
not
but
we are the master
liberation,
race argument.
but you have to ask yourself what comes after quote liberation? What does the reconstruction post liberation look like?
Well, you have to ask anybody who has an argument from liberation. Like
No,
what comes
but
after anyone's liberation, though?
I know, but that's what I'm saying. I don't think saying that we're just the left doesn't have a monopoly on the concept of being oppressed, which is kind of what it sounds like you're the argument that you're making.
Um, I think they might actually, thinking
Really?
about it.
Okay. So maybe
Yeah,
this is the ideological difference between us. Because like when I
maybe.
hear people that are like the very pro-Trump people saying that they're being oppressed, by the government or whatever, I don't think that's an inherent left-wing concept.
Well, I mean, that's why they're mega communists, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Doesn't make any sense. Right.
Well, this is what I mean, though, is that like the oppressor oppressed dynamic seems to be something that comes out of left wing thought, not right wing thought. If you actually look at like, true right wing philosophers, they don't care about that stuff. They're all about like honor and heroism and duty,
Hmm.
these sort of things. They don't care about oppression. They don't care about victimization. It's a different way of viewing morality.
No, no, no. I don't disagree with you, but I think when you have these, okay, so like political movements don't exist in an ideological vacuum of philosophers. They exist in a world where a politician or figure is trying to be persuasive to an audience. And so very often the language and concepts used have to be couched in whatever the popular language and concepts of the time are. Right. And so
Sure.
this is
Yeah.
why you can have I'm sure you've seen, and we've seen a million of these articles that are, people on the left that say like, oh, the right wing white victimization movement. All the white people do is they cry victim, they cry victim, they cry victim, right? And they're trying
Mhm.
to kind of like flip the script on the right. But that just because there's a person who says, listen, I'm a white person and I think I'm being, the victim of racism against me, I don't think that magically means that all of a sudden they've like inhabited the left wing part of the spectrum just because they're saying that they're the victim of oppression or racism.
Remember, Sitch, everything after the Enlightenment is just left wing.
Well, okay, I know you don't believe that, right? I know you don't believe that. Okay, so we're not going into that territory, but
This is what I mean, though. This like because you could actually make the mold bug argument of everything after the Enlightenment is left wing, but it becomes a useless term. But you can at least think about the idea and have a framework, and then figure out what actually right wing is. Or you could use the inverse, right? Because how many communists have said that liberals are far right because they're not overthrowing capitalism, right? This is why I don't like the labels argument because it's just annoying.
no,
Because
yeah,
it's so.
right.
But like this is also why I default to um, universalism and particularism and social construction and naturalism. And it's also why I think that the Nazis are centrist in the end, because the Nazis had a lot of social constructivism in their philosophy, but also a lot of naturalism. And they had a lot of particularism. They also had some universalism
What
too.
was the social
So,
constructivist policies the Nazis had?
well, their over reliance on propaganda, the idea of the fascist new man, these sort of things, right? They could build a new society from the ground up that would be like it would be a modern invention, but it would be ultimately theirs.
Yeah, but wasn't it
The
supposed to
idea
reflect the
is
natural hierarchy?
not necessarily. I mean, it's strange, right? Because when you see if you were to get someone, okay, here's a great example. Here's a great example. Let's say that you got academic agent and
Hmm.
J.F. Garapi into a room and had them
Hmm.
debate. Despite them both being very far right people, how much do you think that they would actually agree?
I don't know. I don't know enough about their philosophies to comment on
well,
that.
well, academic agent, he's much more of like a not he's not religious, but he's like a spiritualist almost.
Hmm.
There's a lot to do with race and spiritualism and some of the things that he talks about. Um,
Hmm.
Garapi though, he's a race scientist, right? Like
Hmm.
the left would call these two people Nazis, but they have very different ideas
Hmm.
regarding what
Sure.
race is. And
Yeah.
so there's an aspect of Nazism that was it was very futuristic, very forward thinking, very scientific, but it was scientific in its racism, right? These are the guys who are like measuring people's heads and noses and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And then you also had the spiritualistic aspect, and these are like the Nazi occultists. And these two groups didn't always get along, but they're still what we call Nazi.
Okay. I'm not sure
Well,
if I'm following. What is the point of? I mean, you could have a bunch of communists argue with each other about like what form of communism, and there's differences between all that too,
sure,
right?
sure,
But
and they purge
but they
themselves.
we still
They
say they're
purge each
on
other
the
all the times.
left,
Yeah,
right? And we still say they're on the far left, and we still say both JF and academic Asia are on the far right,
we do. But is that
right?
accurate though? I mean, like
What
because
is
here's the
accurate?
thing. Well, if we're going to take a different spectrum, and let's say the spectrum is for left wing is science and right wing is religion, JF would be far left.
This is how we know that Dev is a leftist. Okay, he's trying to make the everything's a social construct argument right now. Okay, because that's what I mean. It's essentially what you're doing is you're saying like, well, these are just human-made categories and labels, so does it really matter, Sitch?
I mean, kinda and kinda not. Like, yeah, I am taking the piss a little bit, right? But what I'm trying to get across to you is that left and right as labels are useless, and I fucking hate them.
They're
But if we must use them,
mhm.
I think universal in particular, and social construction and native, those are the ones because they
I
seem to broadly
mhm.
cover everything. Now, the hang up with that is that if you use those two spectrums, it does put the Nazis somewhere in the center, and people don't want to swallow that pill, but it is the truth. You must swallow the centrist pill. You must accept the
Uh-huh.
Nazis as your brothers. This is how it
No.
is.
Why
So
why do we invite Dev on again? I mean,
I know
it's like,
the
Oh wait,
mistake.
yeah,
really? You
total
guys don't like it?
mistake.
Are you being serious, Adam?
I am, yeah. I just look,
Oh,
the whole point of
oh,
doing this exercise is
oh,
to
sorry.
smear people, right?
Oh well.
That's
Okay.
the whole point of having this debate. And you're coming in here kind of maybe oblivious to that. maybe you don't even really understand the optics of this this debate. Maybe you don't understand the motivations behind this debate.
Probably not, because I don't really care about optics at all.
Right? Yeah, he's
Yeah.
got
Well,
that
Listen,
autism.
I
But
would not keep Mein Kampf on my bookshelf in photos if I cared about
if you care about
optics.
optics. Well, I think, well, I want to be clear. My position on trying to like understand the left right spectrum and where the Nazis are is has not to smear anybody,
yeah, look.
Oh,
because
okay.
that's not my position.
Adam's the
Right.
smear job guy.
No,
Well,
no, no.
no,
I
look.
think that people who constantly say the Nazis are left, to me, that's
They're
either
playing that
A,
game. We're not playing that
I
game.
think there's two
Well,
things
I'm not
going on.
playing that
I
game.
think, well, you're not saying they're on the left, you're saying they're centrist. But
Yeah.
I think it's either A, again, smear the left, or B, I think it comes out of a incorrect idea that is mostly an American idea, but not entirely, that to be on the right is to be libertarian. And I keep saying that that idea is not true. Because if that's true, all the right wing conservatives who are very religious, who would be very happy with religious law being instituted into government law, would no longer be right wing. They'd all become left wing. And I think that's the problem, is that libertarians don't exist comfortably on a left right spectrum. I
No.
understand that and I agree with that, but they want to like take it over and say, no, we're the real right wings. Everyone else who's not libertarian is a left winger. And that's not the way that these categories are used in America. And libertarians are a minority. I'm sorry, but they just have to accept that they're their own thing. They're their own separate category.
So I
And
completely agree with everything that you've just said.
right.
Yes.
But
So hold on. I thought you
yeah.
guys were legitimately debating fascism. I didn't know this was like a crypto anti-libertarian talk.
No. It's not anti-libertarian. It's that Twitter Sucks came on and we didn't really know exactly what he wanted to talk about, but he was kind of saying that from the way that he conceptualizes it is that the left right spectrum is the right is more pro free will and the left is less free will, which
That's
is,
retarded.
well, I don't agree with that spectrum either. Okay.
That's fucking retarded.
And so that was kind of what we were talking about. And I don't remember exactly how we got sidetracked into the Nazi part of the conversation, I guess, because it always kind of goes to that position. But I think I agree with that. Like, on one hand, the left right spectrum an idea, it is a limiting idea. And maybe it would be like, well, actually, no, I disagree. It is limiting, but I think it is a useful conception. And it definitely latches onto something. It definitely fits onto something. There's definitely an intuition that I think can broadly be understood as like left and right. And then obviously it can break down into very specifics and they can argue with each other and be different. But I do think there is a broad binary that exists between human groups.
Yeah, sure. And actually, I do agree with you there. But what you're saying is mapping onto something that I've been thinking about, right? So if you look at what we consider to be the various right-wing philosophies, well, what makes them right-wing, right? So, and now think about it in terms of universality and particularity, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
A monarchist, he's on the right, that he's a particularist. Why? Well, because you have basically,
How are you defining particularist?
well, the same as I defined it earlier.
Okay, I wasn't paying attention. I was putting blunts on everyone.
Okay, so a universalist idea is basically the idea
That's
that
the easy one. I get that
everything
one.
should be
Okay.
equal, everything should have like the same standard,
Right.
universal standard, global, blah blah blah. Okay, so the particularist idea is the idea that communities that have some sort of solidarity, they like to be somewhat self-governing. They like to have their own standards that aren't the same as other communities. They like to be kept apart, basically.
So different laws would apply to different people.
Well, let's say different communities.
So, okay, within one nation. So like you could have
It can be within one
aristocracy.
nation or within many nations, right? Because this is why I think the right wing says that the liberals ultimately want to make a global state, because universalism does lead to that eventually. Because we do live in a particularist world in a sense, because we have multiple countries with multiple standards of law. But there has the Enlightenment project has been a very slow movement away from that towards something more universal. Which is why, by the way, most liberals in the United States, they prefer, like these various internationalist institutions and, global coalitions and all this sort of thing. It's all kind of a very vague, very broad push in that direction. And then
Okay.
you have particularists who are like, hold on, no. I want my country to simply be my country, and I don't want to be I don't want to be under the sovereignty of another country. I want my standards to be mine, and your standards can be yours, and things can be a bit
So
different here. That's okay.
so right wingers are the moral relativists.
In some sense, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so wouldn't that have a problem? Like we could have a hypothetical situation where there's someone who we would consider to be very socially conservative, very pro-life, very anti-LGBT, very wants kind of like a more religious, theocratic way of living, but they live in a socialist country, in a very secular socialist country, and then they get invaded. That country gets invaded by like a right-wing theocracy, and so they're like cheering on the right-wing theocracy because they'd rather they take over that country and live under that form of rule.
I mean, yeah. I think that's why a lot of conservatives have gone like pro-Muslim in the past couple of years, despite hating them 10 years ago. It's the same
Right,
thing, yeah.
but that would kind of run afoul the particularism that you're talking about, because they'd say, well, I don't want my particular country's ideas to keep existing because they go against what I want.
Well, sure. I mean, it's because those people have already viewed their country as becoming fully corrupted by global homo. So
Yeah, but see, that's kind of the problem, is that it's like an
Very
unfalsifiable thing,
convenient.
because then it's like, well, even if my country has a particular set of values, well, that particular set of values is really a universal set of values from the global homo thing. So I'm actually still a particularist as I'm being invaded by a different country and they're instilling their values into my country.
Yes, but there is nonetheless still a sort of universal kind of cosmopolitan culture. I think we can reasonably identify that.
No, well,
And it is something
I'm not,
that does seem to that does seem to be pushed. So I
I'm
don't know if
not,
push is I don't know if push is the right word, but it is something that is appearing in the left wing of a lot of different
yes,
countries, and then
I
and then
don't,
the various
right.
native groups of those countries saying, "What the fuck? We don't want this."
I
But
don't
it is all the same
disagree
culture.
with you. That
Okay.
is definitely happening. But I think what I'm getting at is, I think if you had a global right, socially conservative culture being pushed broadly, I don't think all of a sudden the right wing people are like, well, I don't want that. Even if it completely aligns with my moral values, I don't want that because it's a global value and I want my own country's values.
A global
That's what I'm
right?
It's a
saying.
great point. Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
Like,
Exactly
so,
what they
well, like
want.
look at far right theocratic Islam, right?
yeah.
They want a global caliphate that all exists under one Islamic rule. I wouldn't say that that's a left wing because they want some kind of global rule.
Destroyed.
Not that. So let me think about it for a minute.
Well, while you're thinking about it, I'm going to send you the link so we can watch this clip. We started watching this debate yesterday, and we stopped right when it got super interesting. So I was telling Sitch before we started, this guy is a conservative. Stephen Hicks is arguing for liberalism, and the conservative basically, Stephen Hicks responds saying everything that you just said is just kind of a mischaracterization of liberalism, which I think we get a lot from conservatives, which kind of irks me, but we can
Okay.
get Dev's
Um,
response while we're
in
here.
the chat, someone asked, "What is global homo?" So I know everyone thinks that like that it's an LGBT thing. It's not actually. It means global.
Homogenization, not homosexual. Yeah.
Yeah, globalization, homogenization. It's the idea that all cultures should be blended together to make like one very bland, very inoffensive culture that everyone can feel welcome in, but doesn't actually have any prescriptions. And that's probably the difference. Actually, is that Islam still contains prescriptions. It's not it is a conquering culture. It's not a homogenizing culture. That's probably the difference here.
Yeah, but they want to, like, if they got their way, if the theocratic Muslim states got their way, they would conquer and then homogenize everything to their standards.
Well, sure, but okay. Conquering and homogenizing, these are two different things, right? Like homogenizing, like here, let me put it this way. Okay, so conquering would be you have the color blue, and they're the Muslims, and then you have a
Mhm.
bunch of other colors, and then you just paint over everything with blue, right? So homogenizing though is when you take all the colors and mix them into its gray. You know what I mean? That's
Oh,
the
is that what you
difference.
mean by, well, I think
Yeah.
if, okay, I guess I'm thinking just like homogenizing in terms of making everything the same,
No, no, no.
making
I
everything
mean,
uniform or similar, right?
yeah, I understand your point. Um,
Right.
but no, the way I'm using it in this specific context is homogenizing means making everything the same by combining everything, not by
I see.
conquering and overriding
I
everything.
see. So okay, that's and I agree with you. Yes, that I would say the right on average more against that kind of homogenization assimilation process. Yeah,
Yeah. And so
sure.
that's what I mean by universalism versus particularism, right?
Gotcha.
What's interesting is the melting pot ideal of America is a left-wing one, but the
Right.
patchwork idea of America is a right-wing one, where you have a bunch of different cultures that come in, but they nonetheless retain their cultural uniqueness. That seems to be more right-wing, despite being very pro-immigration. Which,
Which
by
is
the way, that
weird because that's what the leftists are advocating for right now.
I think they're sleight of handing it, to be honest. I think
Oh,
they're sleight
okay.
of handing
Maybe.
that, but
Maybe. Yeah.
but anyway, so the reason that I brought this up all the way back at the start is because monarchism seems to be a particularist idea. If we're talking about universalism versus particularism, right? But so does libertarianism, even though monarchy and liberty are kind of at odds with each other. That's why they're both on the right, right? The same with the neoconservatives. They're on the right for the same reason. They all seem to be very particularist ideas. They're just different types of particularism. Meanwhile, on the left, you have socialism, you have like libertarian socialism, you have communism, you have the anarchists that are on the left, you have some liberals that are on the left, and it's because they're all some flavor of universalization. So that's where I think the right versus left spectrum actually functions at its best, because it actually accurately explains why very different ideas like communism and liberalism or monarchy and libertarianism are on the right and left respectively. Um, the one problem with it is fascism, because fascism has a whole bunch of right-wing positions and a whole bunch of left-wing positions. And that's why I say it's centrist, but that's the pill no one wants to swallow.
Well, again,
So,
I think the difficulty is, and the example I want to use the immigration example because I think it's a good example. If you have let's say you have let's just use Asians. Okay, so you have Asians immigrating to America, and you
mhm.
could say, well, currently it would seem that it would be like more the right wing position to say, well, the Asian families coming to America, they should try to adopt as much American culture as possible and kind of become Americanized as opposed to retaining their own culture. That's like what a right wing American idea might be, right? You'd agree with this.
um, I think so, yes.
Okay. And then the left wing person might say, no, this Asian person, they should like retain their own culture, right? They should get to do their own thing. They shouldn't have to assimilate, right? Is what the left wing American would say. But then if you were to flip this perspective and you were to look at it from an Asian perspective or the Asian immigrant's perspective, the left wing Asian person might say, I don't need to necessarily retain my own culture. I should adapt and assimilate to the American culture. And it would be the right wing Asian person that says, no, I need to protect my culture and not assimilate and be my own separate thing. And I think this is where like the confusion comes from when we have these conversations is that you can have different people promote the same idea and they can both be on the opposite sides of the spectrum depending on like who the subject is in that conversation.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Um,
Coolio. Click
I'm
on
not
the
sure if
link.
that changes anything that I said though.
Um, I think it can in terms of the particularism conversation, but Adam wants us to watch this thing. So here, let me, I'll put it in the chat.
Anyway, Adam, if I did actually derail your whole thing, I'm sorry, man.
I sent you the look. No apologies here. They were
You
unaccepted.
didn't derail
so.
anything, but
Yeah,
It
look.
sounded like I did for a minute. You seemed kind of
Yeah.
mad.
I'm not angry. No, not at all. And look, I'm not a big optics guy either. I just sometimes I feel like people who get involved in these conversations are kind of useful idiots for the people who are playing an optics game. That's really what I meant. Yeah.
Well, I think it's
Oh, okay.
important to just, I think it would be like to acknowledge the subtext and then say, like, I understand this is subtext, but this is my position. Is that what you're kind of saying? Adam?
Yeah, exactly. That's
Right.
exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Like just acknowledge that this is a game that's being played to like pin the Nazi on my political rival. That's the game that's being played.
Oh no, that happens all the time, right? Because so I think that we've had a pretty honest conversation here about these things without worrying about where the Nazis ultimately fall on the left-right spectrum. But I guarantee you, every single libertarian who says Nazis are left-wing, they want to pin the current left-wingers who are not Nazis with the label of Nazi. and also vice versa as well.
Well,
Every single time some retarded Twitteroid calls you a fascist, it's not because you actually are one, it's because it's a very useful label. Obviously.
Yes, there you
right.
go.
Well, and to be clear, I don't think Twitter sucks or any other libertarians in our audience that's their goal is to smear the left. I think it's that they identify
As
I
right
think it's
wing, yeah,
as
they
they
don't want to be
identify as right
smeared.
wing, and
Yeah.
they say, well, I identify as right wing, and the reason I identify as right wing is because of my libertarian values, and that seems to completely be contradicted by Nazi not being in favor of libertarian principles. So obviously they can't be right wing. So I just
Yeah.
want to be clear that I think that's what's going on. I don't think Twitter sucks or anyone in our audience necessarily who's libertarian is trying to just do this from some kind of like Machiavellian smear the left sort of tactic.
They're
I think some of them
defending.
do, but yeah, some of them are just being very protectionist of their own ideas for sure. Yeah.
They
Right.
are defending though, because obviously culturally it's accepted that the Nazis are right wing, so they are defending against being labeled
Yes, sure.
Nazis. Yeah.
Yeah, that as well. Yeah.
I guess, but
Yeah. Well, I think so. I think so because if you say I'm a right winger and you're just like a libertarian, and then someone calls you a Nazi, you're like, well, hold on, I'm not that.
sure. But
So,
it's the same thing.
yeah.
Like just because someone identifies on the left in America doesn't make them, socialist.
Yeah, that's true too.
So
You gotta tell, you have to tell Sargon that though because everything's
yeah,
socialist.
that's
Okay, well, here's the ultimate nuanced take. Okay, there's actually like a spectrum within fascism that is
Did
its
he
own
ever
left
click
and
on
right.
the? Oh, he did click on the link.
I did.
Look.
I'm here. But
Okay,
here,
good.
let me just give the ultimate nuanced take. Okay, so you actually do have like left fascism and right fascism within the fascist movement. There is its own spectrum inside of that movement, and so you
Mhm.
have like left-wing fascists, like the what were they called? The Strasser brothers in Germany, right? And they're like basically all of their ethno-nationalism was that left-wing variant. All of their anti-Semitism was based in anti-capitalism. They were definitely like a more socialistic version of what the Nazis wanted. And then you have like, frankly, Hitler types were much more pragmatic. They didn't really have an ideology. They just wanted power and they wanted to use it for whatever the fuck they wanted to do. They're more like the centrist Nazi types. And then you have like explicitly right-wing Nazi types who were very rare, frankly. There's some fucking retard named Ernst Junger that I had the displeasure of reading about 6 months ago, and he was very much like a explicitly right-wing fascist, where basically his belief was that fascism would ultimately destroy all governments and return everyone to monkey where they lived harmoniously in tribes. And like he was like he was what I was getting at when I was talking about post-fascism and the three forms of fascism. He was
Right.
that guy. He was like he was the anarchist fascist.
right.
So like even within fascism, there's left-wing groups and right-wing groups, and there's feuds, and they definitely fought among themselves as well.
This is interesting. Okay.
It's time to read more esoteric, retarded
God,
literature.
please no. So okay, so what is this clip, Adam, that we're gonna watch?
So we watched some of this yesterday. We kind of watched the intro of it. We were talking about Constantine and the Twitter drama he's involved in over the debate he had with Brianna Greyjoy and company. And this debate came up. We watched the beginning of it. We just watched, I guess, the first 12 minutes. But the thing that I liked about this debate, we never got to. Stephen Hicks comes in and basically like slaughters this other guy. So Stephen Hicks is in the liberal position and this other guy is in the conservative position. So we're just going to witness the slaughter here. Ready?
That thinks that it all starts with a break. And I say it's not. It's the fruits of the very order that conservatives seek to preserve.
Thank you. I want to come back to conservatism in a second, but Stephen, a flurry of punches there, so
Okay,
come back on this.
Well,
particularly the idea that liberalism is interfering in things like marriage and changing the way that we do things.
So, this is beautifully said, but
So the flurry of punches we're used to seeing is just liberalism is responsible for all the strife in life concerning wokeness and all of that stuff. That's basically what he says.
three.
Well,
particularly the idea that liberalism is interfering in things
actually
like
here,
marriage and changing the way that we do things.
What?
Oh shit, I was muted. Oops. Sorry. I was saying something, that's why I paused it. Sorry. I mean, I haven't seen this, right? So I'm going to assume his argument, to be more specific, Adam, his argument was something like liberalism has given people a bunch of freedom and a bunch of economic prosperity, and now they're like living as atomized individuals, and their rights are interfering with like communal bonds, and like, you know, the freedom to be gay is like destroying the family, is all this sort of stuff, right?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, I think I understand.
So,
All right.
this is beautifully said, but three huge topics put out there, and I'm going to take
You
just the first
started
one. Well, yes,
I started it.
yeah, that's right. Okay, so but let's take this first one about the liberal mythos, right? That somehow in the Enlightenment there's this radical break with the past, and suddenly liberalism, we're all free, autonomous self. Right? That is a conservative myth about liberalism. There are no liberals. Now, John Rawls is a disaster. We'll come back to him in a moment.
He's your guy.
He is not. He is the
Rawls is the one Sargon's always trying to pin on us, Sitch.
Mhm.
That's pretty funny.
Wait, does he?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I've
Opposite
heard
of
him talk
my
about
guy.
Locke and Rousseau, but
Anyway, but that's the third topic that you are putting out there. Every single important liberal in the tradition, right? And liberalism does have its tradition. Will say, look, by the time we get to the Enlightenment, you are exactly right. The founding fathers of the United States are saying, no, we have to go back to Greece. We have to go back to Rome. There are certain long political traditions. At the same time, they are very well aware, if we are interested in religious freedom, for example, the First Amendment, I know we're in Britain, but I'm going to use this American example. In the Bill of Rights, in the First Amendment, the very first thing is freedom of religion. And it's very clear that this comes out of already 2 centuries of battles over religious freedom, religious toleration, and so forth. The more broad-ranging intellectual freedoms in the sciences, for example, it's already 2 to 3 centuries of debates over whether we should be intellectually free in the sciences or not.
I'll just pause it real quick. This is funny because this is actually a Moldbug argument, but let's keep going.
That's funny.
Well, yeah. Well, Moldbug basically said that like this entire history, the American Revolution was not actually an American Revolution. It was a revolution of liberalism over conservatism, and that it actually started in the UK 200 years earlier. It's the same kind of argument. Okay.
And to artistic freedom. Are we going to censor the theaters, or are we going to allow literary people to do whatever? Already going back to the Renaissance, we have now more than 2 centuries, we have 3 to 4 centuries of debates and hard-fought battles. So what we have then is a multi-front battle with respect to the arts, with respect to the sciences, with respect to religion, with respect to all of the civil freedoms. And so, yes, absolutely, the Enlightenment is a capstone. And then there is a kind of aha moment that many intellectuals are reaching in the 1700s. After we fought all of these particular battles, now we are in a position to generalize and say, it's not just artistic freedom or religious freedom or scientific freedom or freedom to go into whatever kind of business you want. Yes, we are going to generalize to these universal principles. So the myth is, and this is often a conservative reading, that somehow we're springing de novo into existence. I don't think that's a proper reading of liberal. The liberals are proud of their history. Now, to turn the tables a little bit,
So the conservative reading is that everything came out of the Enlightenment. Sargon says
all
that
of
quite
the bad
often.
stuff came out, like all the wokeness.
Yeah,
Well, that's where the liberal project started, was the
Right.
Enlightenment.
that's what Sargon constantly says, that the liberal project started with the Enlightenment.
Mhm.
And he's saying
Stephen
this
Hicks is
actually
saying,
started-
no, the Enlightenment was the climax of the liberal project, that it started in all these other different areas historically, and then once the Enlightenment happened, they could generalize about individual freedom being an overall good for society. The thing that the conservatives are always against, individual freedom. Look, and I know obviously there's a lot of libertarians who think of themselves as conservatives now. Will be like, what? I love individual freedom. But throughout
Right.
history, it's the conservatives that are saying, no, don't do that. Right?
Right. But that's why, yeah, no, exactly. And I think that's why I have a lot of contention with this sort of the idea of putting libertarians as the right-wing definitional point. That doesn't really make sense with history whatsoever.
Yeah, this
Libertarians
guy,
used to be like the far left.
Stephen Hicks, is the ultimate libertarian.
I
Look, and
know,
he's defending
I
the
know.
liberal position here.
I know.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it's because, I mean, libertarian, as so many bread tubers love to tell you, the word libertarian was originally coined to talk about non-state socialism. So fair enough, right? People's liberty once they have like economic freedom. Okay, fair enough. I think libertarianism in America became the right-wing version that it is, basically because of the unique material circumstances that the Americans found themselves in. The natives were all dead. Some of them because you killed them, but a lot of them
Look,
because they just died due to
neither
disease.
one of us accept that libertarianism is on the right. So when you say libertarian is right wing in America, it completely goes against all of my intuitions.
Okay, well, I'll explain how. Okay, if you don't mind.
No, let's just continue with the clip. Let's go forward.
But well, hold on. Is this the point of contention?
Well, no. Look, we've talked about this a million times. Okay, it's just we can talk about it after the clip. Let's continue with the clip.
This with you, but okay.
Well, we can look if you want to make an argument why. I don't want to derail the clip with an hour about why libertarians are on the left.
Okay,
or the right.
Go ahead. Let's go.
Yeah.
We then say the liberals want to say in the social order, there are going to be lots of values that are contested on, and there's going to be a great deal of evolution that goes on. Where the liberals are insisting that liberty comes first is in one area and one area only. That is in the political area. When we are talking about families, when we're talking about other institutions, people might have different orders of what their values are. And we might have contending values in those social. But when we are talking about politics, specifically, when we are talking about government, we have to be very, very clear, because government is in every single society, an instrument of compulsion. It makes its rules. All other social institutions, of course, have rules, but those are rules that are flexible. You can opt in and out of business, opt in and out of a church, opt in and out of playing this or that sport. So they all have their rules, but those are particular rules for those institutions, and people voluntarily sign on to them. When we're talking about governments, we are talking about a different kind of animal. Right? And it's an 800-pound gorilla animal that says our rules are going to apply to everybody in the society. And our rules, if you break one of these rules, the police are going to come to you. We will put you in jail if we find that you are wrong. And we have these rules with respect to foreign people, protecting our people. You come here, we will use our military. So when we are talking about the moral order, right? The liberals are insistent the purpose of government, all of the universal rules and the willingness to use force against anybody, it has to be only with reference to the protection of individual liberties. That's where the insistence comes in. That's where the enforcement comes in. Now,
so this is an interesting distinction that he makes. He's like, look, you can set up any sort of rules you want in these other voluntary institutions because people can opt out of those institutions, right? But in government, you can't opt out. And therefore, that's why individual freedom has to be of the highest order.
Yeah, I completely agree with this, by the way. This is 100% correct. I know the counter argument. I can present it to you if you like, but I want you to understand first, I don't agree with it, okay? Before I hear Dev as a commie in the chat. All right?
The counter argument to what?
What he just said. So he said that the liberals say that liberty comes first only for politics because all other institutions can be opt in or opt out, but you can't opt out of having a government.
Okay,
so you have to have
okay.
a government with a certain standard. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I've heard Vosh characterize his objection to this by saying, well, socialists, liberals and socialists, we both like freedom, we both like democracy, right? Well, socialists just want more of it, which is why we want to actually expand this principle out of government and into all these other institutions as well. And so basically if this guy were to sit down beside a socialist, the socialist would say, I agree with everything you've said. I want more of what you want, though. And this is how this is why Sargon looks at the relationship between liberals and socialists and says, hey, look, they're a continuation of the same thing.
Right. But would be a fallacy, because that's like saying, well, if I take this medicine in the proper dosage and it cures me, but if I take too much and it kills me, well, then that means that this medicine kills me, so I should never take it.
True. So again, I'll put my Vosh cap back on, right? Vosh would say, oh, you don't want more democracy? That means you're a fascist.
Yeah, I know, but that's what he would say, but it's retarded. Yeah, obviously.
Of course it's retarded. Of course it's retarded.
Right. Yeah,
like,
I know.
So I did a video recently about the Italian fascist phrase "menefrego." Did you guys watch that one?
I did watch that one, yeah. I don't care. Yeah, I thought it was good. I thought it was really good. Yeah.
Right. This is kind of the impulse that they're appealing to, right? And this is why they'll always say, scratch a liberal and a fascist bleeds. or why the other side will say that liberals are just communists in disguise, right? Because they think that what this guy is presenting here, this idea that liberty comes first only for politics and other institutions are opt in and opt out. Um, what both the far left and the far right says when they look at this guy is they say, well, he hasn't completed the thought process yet. He hasn't fallen into one of the two camps yet.
Right.
And that's how they view liberalism they view liberalism as being in this quantum state of wanting democracy and not wanting it, wanting freedom and not wanting it, because they view government as being a fundamentally different thing than all other institutions, which it is, by the way. And in my opinion, that's the problem with monarchy. It's a problem with libertarianism. It's a problem with socialism and fascism, is they all view these things. They view government and private institutions as being the same thing. Now, what that thing is differs between the four ideologies, but they view them as being all the same thing. The liberals, and sometimes the conservatives, but generally just the liberals, they're the only ones that view government and non-government institutions as being fundamentally different down to the core. And that's what
We
he's
should
getting
prob-
at here, I think.
we should probably move on to super chats because we got a million
Okay.
of them and we're
Right.
running
right.
late anyway. So
Okay.
Oh, well, okay, sure.
Well, before you do super chats,
I thought you guys wanted to respond to that, but I mean, okay, sure.
well, no, I will. I want to go back to something you were saying with like the libertarian right wing in
yeah.
America thing, which I think is important because I think basically what's happened is that, America is a very weird and unique country in that we don't like conceptualize America's past as being British monarchy and then moving to liberalism and then moving to modern times. We don't view it like that. We view it as like nothing starting as liberalism. And then we're where we are today. And I think because we have that like mental map of America in our minds, this is part of why libertarianism gets kind of cemented as like a right wing thing in America. It's because I do believe it's more complicated, but I do believe a lot of the left right dichotomy is change versus tradition. And from the founding of America was a very libertarian principle. And so that libertarian principle becomes the tradition of the country. And so it becomes like a quote right wing traditional aspect to be like, oh, well, if you're more libertarian, that's more in line with the tradition of the country. Therefore, it's a more right wing thing.
I think it's part of it, but I think there's more to it than that, though. I think there's actually a lot more to it than that. This is what I was getting into a little bit earlier when I mentioned that, the first libertarians were socialists who were anti-state, right? And that's how it was in Europe. Like European libertarians are still this, and American libertarians are different. And I think it's because you guys just had way more room. You had a whole bunch of uninhabited land after all the natives were dead, for a variety of different reasons, but they were all gone. And you had this great expansion westward. So freedom in the American context meant going out into the wilderness that is, untamed, unclaimed, staking out a parcel of land, setting up your little farm or setting up your little shop, and running your life beyond the bounds of a central government in a very individualistic manner. That's what freedom meant in the American context.
Right.
But you didn't have that kind of growing space in Europe because it's all like settled land with kingdoms and republics and all of these governments that have already propped up. So you can't have that sort of expansion in Europe. So for them, libertarianism meant we can't flee out into an uninhabited wilderness to escape these institutions. We must work within them and make them more equitable somehow. So I think that's the difference between the two of them. And because the American type of libertarianism lends itself more to like atomized individualism, more to capitalism, more to private ownership, and the European libertarianism lends itself more to socialism. That's why they've become left wing and right wing, respectively.
Yeah, maybe. I think kind of what I was saying is kind of rooted into what you're saying in terms of like, it's not so much that like the representation of going out into the open land, it's like what the open land represents. It represents the ability to basically do whatever the fuck you want and to be outside the bounds of an external government telling you what to do, essentially. And that idea becomes kind of embedded in the American myth of what it means to be American, and that becomes embedded in tradition of American, and therefore gets conceptualized as like a conservative value, even though it's not really a conservative value that you get to do whatever you want without the government telling you not to, from like a broader philosophical perspective.
Possibly, yeah. But I mean, the whole government tells you what you're going to do. That's also like a socialist perspective in some ways as well.
Of course, that's what I'm saying. It's not the government telling you what to do is neither like authoritarianism. The government dictating what you should have to do is neither a left nor right wing uh, philosophy. But that's my
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. I mean, that's why you have like you have the political square, and you have like
Of
the
course.
Stalinists in the top
Of
left, and
course.
you have like a monarchist in the top right. You have the fascists in the top center. You have to accept that at this point. But yes.
Okay.
well,
Okay. So let
well,
me get
actually, here,
to.
here, actually, no, here, one final question for you, Sitch.
Okay.
Okay, so here, visualize the. We don't have time to actually pull the graphic up. Visualize the square in your head, right? So we
Mhm.
have like Vosh types in the bottom left, or like libertarian socialist types, the anarchist types in the bottom left. You
Sure.
have you have the American libertarians in the bottom right, who are like very, my property, yeehaw.
Right.
You have, let's say, liberals in the center. You have the Stalinists in the upper left, right? And you
Hmm.
have, in your view, the Nazis in the upper right,
Hmm.
right? So what's in the upper center? What's there?
Well, first of all, I'd say I don't know if a lot of American libertarians would even be in the bottom right.
You think they'd be in the bottom center?
Because when you say right, like on the quadrant, the left right is like the social conception of reality. So like the far right means you're like a super social conservative.
Okay, fair enough.
So,
So
but
maybe libertarians are like American libertarians are bottom center then.
yeah, they'd be in the bottom. They'd probably be a little bit more to the right, but they'd be pretty close to the center line, I would imagine, if they're truly a libertarian.
Okay, so what
Um,
would be the bottom right then, in your view?
the well, that would be people who are very, very. First of all, I think it's kind of a contradiction, but I think maybe like the Amish or something, right? Like
Yeah, so
you
like
know,
people who are like living in communes that don't have a centralized government, but they're still very
well,
conservative.
actually, I don't know.
The
It's kind
communists
of
aren't individualistic, though. I mean, what
no.
the?
That's what I'm saying.
They're
I guess actually it
it
wouldn't be
is
the
a
Amish.
contradiction.
I don't know if there is could be in my conception something that exists in that like exact bottom right section because I don't know if there's a person or an ideology that's super socially right wing conservative, but is also like, well, everyone can do whatever they want. Because to me, those are contradictions. I don't think that's possible.
So the interesting conversation about this is that you always see people try to say that either lib right or lib left is not possible.
Hmm.
I think actually they're both impossible, frankly. But um
Well, liberalism is the thing that's interesting. Like liberalism starts out as a left wing movement, but then it becomes so successful and embedded in our society that it becomes the center position that everything else kind of grows out of.
yeah, in some ways it's becoming a right-wing position, frankly.
Well,
Because
once
it's not become a tradition, right? Like
right,
here's the thing.
exactly,
So
yeah.
so for me, like I have a saying. This is going to be Dev's law, I guess. Since we have Sitch's law, we're going to have Dev's law.
Hmm.
Um, Dev's law is that governments should be liberal and people should be conservative. I think it's just broadly a good idea, right? Because
I understand
you
what you
you
mean by that. Yeah, yeah,
you know what I mean by that?
yeah. I know what you mean by that. Yeah, and I've said like I think part of the problem with these political conversations is people kind of think that like there's various groups of people. There's you as an individual, you as your family, you as your community, and then like you as your government. And like people think the same value set should apply to each one, and I'm like, I don't think they should, right? Like maybe your government should have like very liberal standards, but then like the way you and your family interact should be, maybe more conservative.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
So
like it's one of those things where the government should not restrict your personal freedoms, but at the same time, if given the freedom to go and shoot up heroin in the street, you probably shouldn't do that.
right,
You,
you
you,
should
you,
tell your children not to do that, right?
yes,
You should
yeah,
not do that yourself, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
you should be the conservative in restricting
Yes.
yourself from shooting
Right.
up heroin on the street. Yeah, it's
Right.
it's one of those things, right? So
Right.
that's generally how I view it, which is why at this point I'm like I'm liberal, but I'm also quite conservative, and I think my conservative tendencies come from the fact that I view liberalism not just as an ideology, but as a tradition in a sense. It's like,
Gotcha.
liberalism is not just, a text that we should follow. It is in
Sure.
fact the culture that I've grown up in and I want it preserved.
Sure.
So I'm conservative in that way.
Okay. So let me
If
get
that
to
makes sense.
the.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I got you. Hold on. I gotta refresh because my window is lagging
Crash.
so
Look, and
badly.
JMac gave us 50 gifted memberships. Oh my God, that's amazing.
Thank you so much, JMac, our circuit father, Daddy JMac, for the.
Oh my God,
50
JMac,
membership.
I've seen you throwing him around on everyone's channels recently, except for mine.
Oh no.
Actually, to
Well,
be fair,
no.
I haven't streamed in like 2 weeks. I've
there
been
you
really,
go.
really busy. I've been really
There you
busy.
go.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but I finally put out my Chugga Conroy video. Oh my God.
I don't watch any of that, but I
You
will.
have super chats about it.
Okay. Let me get to these.
Oh,
Adam on Fire for
okay,
17
cool.
months says if you support A Team, you're supporting Redacted of S Class. Vote with your wallet and support S Class to stop A Team. S Class is best class. There you go.
True.
Brian, thanks so much for the $50.
Yeah.
Says
look at
Hitler's,
this.
or for the $60. So let me read them together. Hitler's Germany were socialists. It's just that they were state socialists in the same way China is, where they use private property in the service of the state, where private business work in conjunction of the people's interests through the state, but they were not left wing. They were third rail position that used whatever worked in the benefit of the state, but is highly influenced by socialism with conservative social structure. Okay.
Well, a lot of people define fascism as where
Right.
business and the state fuse. So,
Which is a terrible definition.
okay. Was a common
Yeah,
definition. but-
It's a common definition, but it's from a mistranslation of a Mussolini quote. It's dumb.
I kind of like understand where that's coming from like the corporatist model.
yeah, totally.
But then you kind of could say, well, a lot of socialism is fusing business in the state too. So I think that's why it's kind of like a confusing
Yeah.
category.
And also, like, there was that James Lindsay versus Destiny debate where James Lindsay tries to basically say that public-private partnerships are fascism per Mussolini's definition. I'm
right,
like,
that was not
that means every
correct,
single government is a fascist government then through the
Right.
entirety of history. Like, it's so stupid.
right.
Does fascism serve the people though in the same way that communism purports to do, or does it serve the party elites?
It certainly purports to serve, the people. It's just that the people are one like nationality or one ethnic group or something.
Yeah, but does it serve them equally or does it serve them hierarchically? With fascism.
Okay. God.
Because I mean, if it
is a weird
serves them equally,
conversation.
why is it just not called communism?
Fascism purports to serve them both equally and hierarchically.
Fascism does?
That's what they claim. It doesn't, obviously, but in their political theory, that is the claim that they make.
Interesting.
Their claim basically is that because hierarchies are inevitable, the only valid hierarchies are state hierarchies. And if everything is brought into the state and everyone takes their proper place within the state, they will still be in a hierarchy, but from the point of view of the state, they will all be equal as components of it.
So fascism supports hierarchy and communism is about flattening hierarchy.
No, it's still not quite that simple, because the fascists basically view the hierarchy as cementing in place and then becoming its own form of equality.
Yeah, but that sounds like it's kind of like saying it's like was that the book where they like breed the people genetically to match their social class?
Yes. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Brave
New World.
Brave New World. Yeah, right. So like it sounds like the fascists saying like, well, we need Brave New World where we kind of cement your status. And then once you're in your correct social status, you'll be happy. But I wouldn't call that equal. Obviously, that's completely the opposite of equal. Whatever, like if they say it's equal, that's just them kind of abusing the language.
Sure. I mean, I agree with you there, right? That's why I said they don't actually, like, their political theory basically says if everyone takes their proper place in the hierarchy and stops trying to go up or down,
they'll be happy and find
they'll
fulfillment.
they'll all be happy. They'll find fulfillment, but also it will become its own form of equality because the
They're playing with language, so obviously.
Their view is the social pressures that generate out of inequality will disappear. So the word equality will have no more meaning.
I see. Well, I get that, but I would say that like when we're kind of trying to describe it, I think it's more useful to say like, well, we would broadly say, yeah, socialism wants to find hierarchies, fascism wants to cement hierarchies, and I would just kind of dismiss like they say that, but that's bullshit, obviously.
Yeah, totally.
I would just kind of dismiss it.
Well, I wouldn't dismiss it though, because I think this is one of the reasons why left-wingers view monarchy and fascism as the same thing, because the monarchists said, we'll have our hierarchy and you'll just take your place in it and you'll suck it. And I don't care how you feel about it, frankly. The fascists said, no. This is utopian, actually. All right. When you take your place in the hierarchy, your life will actually be better.
No,
right?
I get it,
and
but
then,
it's like,
it's still bullshit.
And then they basically say like all class distinctions will dissolve within the structure of the state. And even though you'll be on different levels in terms of like who runs a workplace or something, you're all going to be equal relative to the state itself.
I get it. Yeah. There's like, the monarch, and I understand there is a distinction, right? The monarch is saying, I'm at the top dog, everyone else sucks farts beneath me, and you just have to suck it up. And the fascists who are kind of advocating for a similar system are saying, no, no, no. Once you get all subsumed, like at the end of Neon Genesis, into the giant, conglomerate being that is the state, even if you're like technically lower status, you're so subsumed in part of the body of the state that you will feel like that everything is equal. Like, and I get it.
Yeah.
So it's like a weird situation where
that's
like
their political theory. Yeah.
right. So on one hand, like I get it that it's different, but on the other hand, it's like practically not different, even if they're making an excuse. But anyway, we can move on. It is an
Sure, yeah.
interesting distinction. Thoughts Apprentice for $5 says they were right-wing socialists. It's a syncretic ideology. They were Hegelians, so they took rightist social beliefs and leftist economic beliefs. Brian for $60. Thank you so much for the $60, Brian. Says, disagree with you, Sitch. From our founding, we had a distrust of the government. The right has a pick yourself up by your bootstraps motto. It's not that we think the government is left-wing. The government will always suck at solving my problems when compared to me. As a side note, Hitler didn't like communists because their ideology was borderless global ideology, where Hitler and Mussolini believed in state socialism only for their citizens. Well, I think like regarding this, the first part, the distrust of government that was kind of emboiled or embedded, I should say, into our founding was because we were fleeing a right-wing monarchy, right?
Yep.
And so we were saying, well, we don't want to recreate a strong, centralized, right-wing monarchy based on the idea that like there's a clear hierarchy with the king at the top and everyone else underneath. And then you get kind of confused because now the perception is, well, the strong central government is not enacting a right-wing natural hierarchy that you would from a monarchical standpoint, but like is forcing a left-wing perspective down. And so I guess that's kind of why there's like this confusion in terms.
Yeah, there's a decentralization of power that took place. It doesn't really, centralized power and decentralized power could be a spectrum, but it doesn't map onto left and right well, because I think the left and the right both want to centralize power, but in different ways.
Well, only if it's, I think both
only
left
if
and
it
right
serves them. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Obviously,
exactly.
yeah.
Right.
The left wants to the left wants to centralize power to flatten hierarchies. The right wants to centralize power to solidify hierarchies.
Right? Traditions or whatever. So the social conservative.
So where does that put the
philosophy.
people who want to decentralize power?
It puts them against whoever the power is at the moment. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Libertarian, and that's why like we had that weird situation, if you guys remember, where there was the devil statue, the Satanist statue in the courthouse, and all the conservatives lost their mind, right? And they all said they all wanted to say, fuck the First Amendment. We should get this out of the state courthouse. And if you're libertarian, you should be like, well, I'm libertarian and, freedom of speech, secularism, right? So.
Well, this is why I think a lot of the American right wing are moving away from libertarianism and more towards reaction right now.
I agree with you completely. Yeah. Libertarian Sasquatch for $2 says, are HOAs leftist or conservative? I would say neither definitionally. It kind of depends on what goals and policies they would be in favor of. So
they're in the centralized power realm, though.
Right. They are. That's true. They're more authoritarian. Antelope for 2 months says, classical fascists were authoritarian centrists, only caring about the state. Nazis were a separate kind of fascist and more explicitly right-wingish. Yeah, I've heard that argument. That's what God, what's his name?
Me.
No, did you? Maybe you said that. Who's the
Tick? Talking about Tick?
Not Tick. Tick does not say that whatsoever.
Oh, okay, I thought he did. But all right.
No, Tick is like the Nazis are all left wing guy. Ryan Chapman. That's what Ryan Chapman says. Yeah, and Ryan Chapman seems pretty smart. So, and Dev seems kind of smart too. So if Dev says that,
Oh, well, thank you.
Blanche for $20 says, it's possible for a left-winger to be racist. It's possible for a right-winger to appreciate multiple cultures. To place them singly on one side or the other is a mistake. You have to look at the philosophies. Yeah, no, obviously, I think both sides can be racist. I think the racism just manifests for different reasons and for different causes, essentially, as I said. The right is, I want to protect my own race culture from being degenerated, and the left is my own race culture is bad and is causing problems. So I kind of want to, adopt a different policy, a different cultural policy. Stock for $5 says if you're going to drop the left-right labels for economics, I think you should drop it for social policies, attitudes too, for clarifying it, nothing else. I mean, I'm not dropping it. I just think it all has to be insert on what it's in service of. What is the goal? What is the intent of the policies? What is the intent of the philosophies? What is it trying to manifest in the world? That's how I think things should be categorized. Whether
Yeah, how they're
right.
useful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Useful for communication.
Magor for 16 months says property rights can be authoritarian too. In ancient Rome, their religion obligated them to sacrifice some harvest to ancestors buried on their land. Oh, that's interesting. I don't know. That's interesting. Yeah, that is a very fascinating idea. I don't know how to think about that. You need to sacrifice some amount of your crops to like the dead people. An Antelope for $5 says Mussolini's original classic fascism was only about the worship of the state, nothing else. Dev made a really good video on fascism.
Cool.
Thank you. I've made many.
Brian, I almost said Hitler. Brian for $10. Thank you. Says Hitler's Germany brought about the idea of racial superiority from the idea of eugenics. They thought they could expunge the world of its ills through eugenics, and that idea was pushed by the left.
That's a good point.
Well,
yeah, eugenics kind of came out of the scientific method, which was like an Enlightenment thing. Yeah.
Eugenics within itself is neither a left nor right idea. So like, because there definitely was the left progressive movement in America that was originally pushing for eugenics. But again, it was pushing for it in terms of we want to have everyone be like super geniuses. We want a society where everyone's like a super genius and not sick, right? And the right was like, well, I should say Hitler, I should say the right. The Nazis were like, we need to use this to, they weren't selecting for fitness, right? They were selecting for Aryanness, which then they kind of backwards worked out to be a selection for fitness, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, in both cases, though, it's still an attempt to, let's say, micromanage society top down to get like certain outcomes, as opposed to just letting people do whatever they want and let the chips fall where they may. So
yes, yeah,
eugenics, have different definitions that makes it left or right. Yeah.
Well, again, I mean, eugenics. Now, I don't think eugenics is a left or right policy. Eugenics is definitely an anti-libertarian philosophy, obviously, because it's anti you doing whatever you want. So, Grendel Vivat for $50. Thank you so much. Says to expand on what Stug said a while ago, I think we need an XYZ graph with various spectrums. Liberal versus conservative, authoritarian versus anarchy, and individualist versus collectivist. Trying to fit everything into just one seems to be creating a bottleneck.
Hell yeah.
Maybe. I still think that there is a broad left-right dichotomy that exists. And I guess maybe it's not good because I say it like it exists, but then there's the asterisk and libertarians just don't exist on that spectrum. So maybe we need more.
Yeah, I think like 6, 7 spectrums. More spectrums are better because there are all these different criteria for measuring left and right. And it's best if you can find things that are at odds with one another, that are truly like opposites.
You know what, guys? I think the left wing is actually coming around to the mold bug position on this conversation, frankly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Let me just post this to you, okay?
What is the mold bug position?
Everything post-Enlightenment is left wing. And everything pre-Enlightenment is right wing. But yeah, so this is from a political science lecture at the University of Michigan.
You said that Stephen Hicks was making that argument, but he's not making that argument. Stephen Hicks was saying that the left-wing position.
Adam.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, that was just a joke.
Oh,
but no, this guy this guy that I posted in the chat though, this professor here, Matt McManus, he's saying a huge chunk of right-wing discourse can be boiled down to the right wing still hasn't accepted the French, the sexual, or the civil rights revolution. And I'm like, that's getting pretty close to the everything that is post-Enlightenment is left-wing idea that Moldbug put forward.
So look,
that seems to be
what Moldbug is saying is a mischaracterization of the liberal position by conservatives, just like Stephen Hicks laid out in the video.
Yes, that's true. However, what I'm saying here is that even if that's that position, even though it's a mischaracterization, is what, let's say, the dissident right has taken up as.
Yeah, of course they like mischaracterizing the left. Why wouldn't they?
Well, sure. But this
why are you
because this
why
guy
are you so invested in this mischaracterization of liberalism?
No. What you're saying is like, So I understand what you're saying. You're saying like when Richard Wolff, like so for a long time the conservatives would say, whenever the government does something, that's socialist, right? And it's like, okay, that's not.
Yes.
It's obviously not true. That's a mischaracterization. But then Richard Wolff comes along and he sees value in that mischaracterization, and then
Yes, of
he
course he
starts using
does.
that to define socialism, right? He keeps saying whenever the government does something that's socialism, because he thinks that will convince kids to be socialist. And so you're saying that basically now, the Mencius Mollberg people would mischaracterize and say like, well, everything after the Enlightenment is
Left
leftism
wing. Yeah.
is left wing, and even though it's not true, and then now the leftists are seeing some kind of value in agreeing with that mischaracterization.
Yeah, because now the leftists can say, "Oh, you're a right winger. Does that mean that you're against everything we've built in the past 100 years? What kind of terrible person are you?" So they're gonna start beating them with that. That is, I
Right.
think, like I'm looking at this tweet right now, and it's like it's slowly taking off. I think this will, in the next 3 to 5 years, become the mainline view from both the left and the right on what the left and the right is.
But is
Maybe.
it good
Moldbug's
to
gonna win, unfortunately.
give in to the mischaracterizations on either side?
No,
No,
I don't think
Obviously,
so, no.
people are using them for political expediency, but you're not getting closer to the truth.
sure. Where were we? Ostracy for $5 says behind the stream, but Sitch's hierarchy statement means Soviet Russia actually is right wing. Good to know. I'm not sure I exactly follow. You'd have to expound on that. Magora for $5 says probably more accurate to say property ownership can be authoritarian. It was very hard to sell land in ancient Rome. Source: the ancient city. Okay. Edward Sr. for $10 says, isn't the purpose of this discussion to expose the hypocrisy of Marxists supporting Palestinian property rights? I'll be honest, I don't remember what was the original purpose that Twitter Sucks wanted to necessarily discuss like going on. But if that was the purpose, that went over my head. If it was to expose the hypocrisy of Marxists supporting Palestinian property rights, which I think is hilarious, but
here's the thing. I think like a lot of the socialist left in the West, they support all of these little dissident movements, even if they might be right-wing movements, because they view them as useful tools to tackling the global capitalist machine.
yes, because they just hate liberalism so much. Yeah,
Yep.
sure. Jonathan Smith for $10 says Nazi National Socialists never described themselves as fascist. They blended a national ethnicism and socialism. They had an early alliance with conservatives, which toned down the socialism first. Is that true that Nazis never identified as fascist, like with Mussolini or anything?
No, they didn't. That was a little
Interesting.
pushed on them, basically because they joined up in World War II. In fact, at the very start, like I think there was a fascist government in a country that the Nazis invaded, and they basically killed all the fascists there. And Mussolini was pissed about it. They were almost enemies in World War II.
Hmm.
Which I mean, by the people are saying that makes them opposites. Listen, guys. All right, socialists kill socialists all the time. Okay, fascists killed fascists all the time. There's always infighting. There's always different groups. It's just how this stuff goes.
Right. Statutory 8 for 11 months says, do left and right wing really mean anything more? Both furthest parts of the spectrum don't seem to like individual rights. Well, I agree with you 100%. That's kind of my point. So
Yeah,
that's what he
this
was
is
getting at
how
with,
libertarians bounce back and forth.
But right. But I guess the problem is that some people want to put individual rights on one end of the spectrum, and I just don't like on the left right spectrum. And in America, the terms left and right are too embedded in our ideas of meaning something different that we can't necessarily do that and communicate and be like, no one know what the fuck you're talking about, essentially, if you do that when you have a conversation. So Thal for $20. Thank you so much. Says Adam is being a flamer. Badoom. Oh, you had the fire on. Twitter Sucks. Hey, Twitter Sucks for $2 says my main point was private property is right wing. Oh, gotcha. Well, which I guess we just disagree with. So I disagree with that completely. But
is there a left wing private property?
Well, the original concept of private property was left wing.
What do you mean?
Because
They
the original
call it
point was there was no private property.
neoliberalism.
There was just the king's property. You didn't have access to private property.
Yeah,
The
economic
king was
freedom.
chosen by God or something.
I mean,
So,
I guess, but I think they still characterized it like as his private property, you know?
Yeah, but is it really okay? I mean, I guess you could say, well, technically it's private property, but it's like, is it really, does a society have a concept of private property if only one person has access to it? I would say
Yeah,
no.
I think so, because you have multiple kings with multiple little nations, and
Yeah, but the
they all have
king
their
is
own
the
private property.
state. If the king is the state and the king has all the private property, how is that private property if he's also the state? That means that when you say something is state property, it means something different in a liberal democracy versus a monarchy.
Private property comes out of individual rights, the
Right.
cornerstone of liberalism. They call it neoliberalism for a reason.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. No, I
So-
understand that, right? I understand
Yeah.
that. It's just that, like, it's different when a government owns all the property and administers it on behalf of the people, you know, the masses, versus when a king owns the property and just owns it for himself, and you just happen to be living on it by his good graces. Like,
Well,
these are
but
two
the-
different ideas.
Yeah, but the king, whenever we argue the monarchs, I would say the king is supposed to still be acting within the benefit of the people in the kingdom, right?
That's true. Yes. He still has, like, if we're talking about, like, you know, the idea of a good king versus a bad king, you know, the good
Sure.
king is the one who actually,
Right.
you know, does what his people want them, you know, want, and represents them well, basically, and make sure he's not like enriching himself off of them unduly or something. But he still owns the property in the end.
Yeah, but okay. I think we have to prevent ourselves from falling prey to word thinking. We get
Yes.
stuck in like the word as
Thank
opposed to the
you.
concept, right? And so
Okay,
like
what's the concept here?
yeah, so someone could make the argument and say, well, technically, and this is kind of the Moldbug argument, technically it's private property, even if one person owns everything and no one else can own anything. And it's like, well, I don't see how that's different. If that person who owns everything is the state, that's no different than saying the state owns everything. It's just that one person is the state. The concepts are the same. Where the concept of private property that we're talking about in modern times is that you as an individual have the ability to own a piece of land, a property, which you can, you know, do whatever, not whatever, but do, you know, essentially whatever you want as long as you're not infringing on other
Whatever.
freedom. Right.
Oh,
You know, so
Sure,
so they're
anything.
very, so just to be clear, these are incredibly different concepts. And I think it's word thinking to say like they're the same when they're completely different.
Yeah, I
Well,
agree.
I guess what I mean, though, is like this is the same critique that a socialist would levy against liberal society, right? Because we do have a situation right now where more property is being accumulated in the hands of fewer owners. You know, corporations are getting bigger, the rich are getting richer, people don't own their houses anymore. You know, it's the same type of criticism where we can get to a society that functions exactly like a feudal society, but through completely liberal means.
I don't think you can actually, but
I think you can, absolutely.
there's a
I mean, I'm
difference
not-
between saying that like, well, there's a top-down structure that dictates that the king owns everything, and then he can sort of like in a Game of Thrones kind of way say like you are the protector of this piece of land that is still mine, but you're the protector of like this, you know, thing. Like you are lord of this area, even though it's still mine. Okay. And it's all still the king's. That's very different than saying like, well, anyone can just work and make enough money and be successful enough that they can buy land. And there's corporations and people that are more successful than other people that just buy more land in a kind of bottom from it's not top down prescription, it's a bottom up prescription or bottom up system.
Well, sure, but I mean,
so
imagine a future where, let's say, a dozen housing companies owns all the houses in the United States, and you could buy one, but none of them are going to sell. All you can do is rent from them. You know,
okay, well then
functionally,
sure.
it's the same system.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, if we get to some kind of weird dystopian system, I guess you could get to essentially recreating that system. Sure.
Yeah, I mean,
Sure.
that's a common
Okay.
socialist critique of liberalism, is that
Well, we're
if
not
you
there
centralize,
yet, so you know.
if you centralize enough wealth into the hands of
Mhm.
enough a few people, which liberalism can allow to happen, then you
Mhm.
do end up recreating the same social structure of feudalism, just without the god part, basically, or the
Okay.
king part.
That's fair, but I think that's why we have regulations and ways of preventing that and wealth redistribution to prevent all
So,
these things. Yeah. So okay, fair enough. Solid for $2 says, is the Lockean proviso a valid limitation on property rights?
Oh God, you want to talk about it?
I don't even know what the Lockean proviso is. But...
Okay, so do you know Locke's?
We're running super late here, so
we
maybe
are.
should-
This
yeah.
is a philosophy question. Do you want to get into it or no?
Well,
No,
let's
I
not get
don't.
into it. Let's not get
Yes.
into it.
I'd like to
Now, like
wrap
always
up in
for
like 15 minutes. So
I know.
Oh, sorry, dude.
Sorry, Sala.
Maybe we
Dollar
should
goes
just
fun.
let's. Do we have any super chats for Dev? Maybe we should just read those and then we can move on.
Let me see. Nomad for 13 months says roast Dev.
Well, that's
also, Adam,
not
what's
really.
the program? Also, Adam, what's the program that you're using to have those effects on you? I'm buying webcam soon. S class is yeah. A team is yep.
I have a like snap camera, but it broke, and I had to like kind of Mickey Mouse it together. So I don't know that you can just use this program.
Dollar always for $5 says, Dev, do you not understand the difference between bringing diverse people into your society and the idea of quote living space?
I mean, yeah, but I don't know what that's in reference to be honest.
I'm not sure I get it either.
Yeah.
Let's see. John Watts for 14 months says, the Chugga video never had been so fascinated by people I don't care about, Dev.
I've heard people really like that video, despite it being cringe central.
Mhm.
You guys should watch it one day.
I will.
Wait, you should watch it on this show.
Oh,
Do a
okay.
16-hour
Oh,
react
okay.
to my 2-hour drama video about Chugga Conroy.
Okay. Moondoggy for $10 says, Dev is a treasure. Look at his fat cheeks.
Thanks.
Silver Camaro 78 for $5 says, Dev, tell Adam and Sitch about how you wear a diaper. It's okay, Dev, that they're your friends. We still all love you, even if we don't get your obsession. Is this true?
People are
Dev? Do you
trying.
wear a diaper?
This guy is trying to force the devs in a diaper meme. Let's not do it this time, okay, guys?
That's okay. So it's not true. It's just a meme.
It's not true.
Okay. Silver Camaro 78 for another $2 says, say it loud and proud. D Club stands for diaper. Okay, well, there you go. Listen, maybe he's got a diaper fetish. He just really wants you to sort of like embody
To join
his
in?
diaper fetish. Yeah.
To be his
Exactly.
diaper brother.
J Macker, so we got follow for $20. Thank you so much. Says, what political quadrant supports big and stinky, Dev? Or are you too much of a coward to say? Quit dodging. Also, didn't forget you. Still working on your fitness program. Just been busy. Heart.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks. Okay, so big and stinky comes from the Chugga Conroy video.
Oh,
He,
gotcha. Okay.
Since you guys probably won't watch the 2-hour video,
I'm gonna watch it.
I'll give you the 30-second TLDR. Wait,
Okay.
do you care? Or do you care
Not
if I spoil it?
really.
Yeah,
Okay,
no,
fine.
not really.
So here's the spoilers. Okay.
No, that
Chugga
meant I didn't
Conroy-
want to
no,
hear
we
it.
don't really want to
Oh.
hear it, is what we meant. But
Oh.
look, Dev, you are welcome to come on again. We usually try to stream for like a couple hours during the week, so we're
Right.
already hitting like hour 3 here. So
Oh,
We
I don't
Yeah.
know how long you guys.
this is
go
not
during
this
the
is not
week.
like a Sunday stream where we just like stream for
Go
10
forever,
hours.
yeah,
yeah,
Go forever.
yeah.
Okay, well,
So
sorry
we're on a
about this. I don't know what's
schedule
going
here.
on. Sorry.
No,
Not
that's
a
fine.
big-
Listen, I still
Look,
love you,
it's-
Dev. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and
I still
look,
want you to hold me in your arms while you
and
wear a
come-
diaper.
come on and talk to us for a couple hours another day. So
Yeah.
Sure.
or
sure,
come on
sure.
or come on the
Absolutely.
Sunday stream where you can just gab and gab and gab for as long as you want.
Forever.
Yeah, look,
Forever.
I'll go
Like,
out.
don't-
I'll
do-
go out and get
do I-
takeout. I mean, it'll be great.
Do I gab too much for you, Adam? Is that a problem?
Well, only when we're on a schedule. So you're
Okay,
like,
fair enough.
I'm trying to
fair
get done in like 15 minutes, and you're like, let me tell you about the philosophical history of fascism.
enough. Let's do it. Okay.
No,
here,
let's not do
fine,
it.
fine. I'll say one last thing then, okay? And then I'll
Okay,
shut
let's
up.
hear it.
One last thing. You should actually schedule my video for a Sunday show because it'll be a great fun time. But here's the thing: it's not politics. It's all YouTuber drama, but it's at least hilarious.
Okay.
Well, we do
I'll
like YouTube.
Watch it and think
drama.
about it.
I think I might have watched this video. I'm pretty.
I haven't seen
look,
it yet.
It's funny because YouTube drama, you have to say, "Oh, I'm not interested in that," but everyone watches it. So
Yeah. Well,
True.
I had to re-upload it because I got flagged down by one of the fucking people that I criticized. So I took out the edgiest joke was like a Buffalo Bill joke about a trans person. I took that out, and hopefully YouTube will keep it up this time.
We can hope.
Hopefully.
Asha C for $5 says, I feel like Dev is outlining my liberal governments are good, but liberal culture sucks statement.
Yeah, probably.
Twitter Sector Joe says, Dev, you and I should chat on Discord sometime. Want to talk to Twitter Sucks? That's who was on
sure,
the call
sure.
when you came in.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, those are all the Dev specific ones.
all right, we'll
So-
say goodbye to Dev. Thank you
Does it
for
mean-
coming on.
Does it mean you're kicking me out now?
It does. It does.
It does, yeah.
I can't
but
stay
look,
here and derail
like I
every
said,
other super chat.
Now
Like I said, we'd love to talk. We'd love to talk to you again. We'll definitely have you on again many times, over and over, because we love
Forever.
having you.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Okay, I'll see you next time.
Thanks for coming on, Dev. It's always a pleasure.
See ya.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Oh.